We're live.
Now we're live.
Rich is gone. I'm the captain now. You guys are going to respect that. We got rid of Rich Ryan and Jack Bauer this week. We've replaced them with what I would consider mostly upgrades. We have one of the top hybrid racers on the planet, as well as David Magida. So, guys, thank you for joining us.
Why did you put my name as Magina on this thing?
Does that say Magina?
It's
Magina. It does say Magina.
I'm sorry. That's an autocorrect. It recognizes
I'm
Magida
sure
as
it was,
Magina.
Bracken. I'm sure it was.
No, like I said, I'm not captain. I can take care of this. Watch this. I know how to do this.
Wow, look at that. This is a better name. David Magida,
right,
Jack's full-time replacement.
Did I get it? Oh, shoot. My goodness. Give me a second.
So close. So close.
I can get this.
And here you are, back in your full Hyrox live stream mode.
It rubbed off on me. What can I say? There we go.
That looks very nice. So we were just talking about slumming it, dressing up, dressing down, and I was making the point that when like dress clothes and all this like fancy dress up stuff was designed for like more portly people, and that people who are like very fit, very athletic, like we look better the less we wear. Like the more we put on, the less good we look.
Because we look more normal.
Well, it normalizes us when we cover our bodies, right? Is
yeah,
that what
I think even more so, like those
the muscles
clothes
are hidden, and you know what I mean.
But like a lot of those brands, like Brooks Brothers, like those clothes are cut for like a more portly body type. And so like when we put that on, not only do we look like we're hiding our muscles, like in a lot of those like brands, you actually look a little like kind of frumpy.
Well, thank you all for joining us for Ego Trips with David. We'll be hosting this weekly where he talks about how muscular he is.
What do you look best wearing, David? Then give it to us.
I'm like honestly like what I'm wearing right now, like hoodies and sweats and t-shirts and stuff. I don't really do much. Jeans. That's about it.
Right. Let's go around the table.
This conversation started because Meg said, Bracken said, Meg, I've never seen you outside of like race or training apparel. And then Meg said, I think I look better when I'm in training apparel than regular life. And that's where this started. And I've heard many times before, like, you can't tell what you're working with if it's hiding under a suit coat. It's like tough, right?
True.
Whereas a V-neck a size too small is going to show it all off.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So Meg actually started this conversation, to be honest. David really ran with it, though.
So, Dave, your best is workout material or sweats? Kirk, what about you? What's your best look?
I don't like literally athletic pants and a t-shirt that's slightly too small. Yep. That's exactly it.
Yeah,
Meg,
exactly.
Meg,
what's you?
Yeah, just like leggings, like a crop top, sports bra situation for sure.
Can I answer for you, Bracken? Bracken is a pair of mid-thigh shorts and
I was going to say
a cut-off sweatshirt hoodie.
No.
Lisa, so like the sleeveless sweatshirt hoodie.
Yeah, Lisa cannot stand when I cut the sleeves off sweatshirts, and I don't get it. I don't know why. No, it'd be sweats and a cutoff shirt would be probably my best.
You do love the cutoff shirt. Like I remember that gray Spartan shirt you had with like the peak on it, and you immediately took the sleeves off it and wore it in every picture for like 2 years. I remember this so distinctly.
I just wore it for all the stadium races.
Oh, okay. I had a buddy who bought me one of those as like a birthday gift. He bought me like one of those like already pre-made sleeveless hoodies, and I'm still trying to figure out like when is appropriate to wear this.
Never.
Whenever you want to get made fun of.
Yeah, if you're gonna wear an upside down visor, it's either cut off yourself or you wear the whole thing. I don't think you're allowed to buy it pre-cut. That's very hipster.
Maybe I'll wear it to Hyrox.
Meg, I wanna jump to you really quick because you're the first woman to ever be on this podcast. Ever.
Oh my God.
This is
an honor.
Bravo.
How do you feel? How does it feel? Do you feel any?
I love being a trailblazer. So that's like check it off the list, goals.
And having traveled with Meg in Europe, I can tell you she can handle the inappropriate humor too. That's good. The show.
I think I add a lot to that.
There was a pretty specific process of how we went about choosing our fourth member. I texted Dave and said, what female would talk shit? And Dave said Meg Jacoby. And that was
It's
it.
not exactly
got
what
the
he
job.
asked me, but
We needed someone who wouldn't just be buttoned up.
Yeah, I'm straight up.
Yeah.
I'll lay it out there. We're in some group chats together, Magida and I, so he knows.
Well, we're going to start laying it out right away.
All right.
We're going to dive right into the deep end of controversial topics because we have two people here right in front of us who can personally answer the question that we've been debating endlessly for 2 years, the difference between Euro and US races. So you guys both went over for the European Championships, and then you both just did the North American Championships. And there's been a lot of chatter on what did it even mean. And fortunately for him, but unfortunately for all the rest of us, Ryan Kent screwed up the equation. He muddied the water by not having a great North American Championship and then coming out and running the second fastest time ever as soon as he got back to the next race on U.S. soil. And then Ronkovic just one-ups him and runs the actual now second fastest time on European soil. So that right there muddied it. But if we take that one piece out, I really, really want to know what is the real truth here, because on the live stream for Houston, I don't know if you guys watched the live stream, a European chimed in that's worth about a 58 on a European course. Can we please just put this argument to bed? They put that on Kent's.
Wait. They said that like the opposite. Like our courses are faster than their courses.
Yes.
Like a 56 is worth a 50.
Can we just put the argument to bed? This is worth a 58.
Let's just name the person. Name who this idiot is.
I don't remember which name, but it was like a top 20 in the world guy.
Magida's getting right in there.
So let's jump in. Floor is yours.
Yeah, all I want to say is, first of all, supposed top 20 in the world guy, you're an idiot. And let's look at the races. There were 2 56s run this weekend. So 2 sub 57s, let's say. One by Kent, who ran a brilliant race where I pushed sleds that day. I pushed an open wave sled, and it was heavier than any European sled I've ever pushed. And it was an open weight sled.
How many heavier than any pro weight European?
And heavier than any pro European weight that I've ever pushed. It was
how many have you done
in Europe?
Yeah,
I've done Leipzig, and then I did Maastricht. And
so it wasn't a one-off.
No. So in my 2 European races, my sled pushes were 231 and 214. My sled push 3 weeks after pushing 214 in Europe was 318, just for frame of reference here. And also in the same day that Ryan Kent pushed 314 in Houston on his way to a sub 57 time, Alex Ronkovic, my boy, pushed a 145. So his 56 is not the same 56. I'm just saying, when you're 90 seconds faster on one station, like it's not the same race. Like your ability to run is just so different after that.
145 is what Rich and I split in doubles with women's pro weight.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I said the weights in Europe are actually lighter than our open weights here.
The women's pro race too, like I had sent Magida, there was a post about it on one of the Hyrox pages, and I forwarded it, and I was like, is this real life? Like there was zero struggle. The sled is moving like butter. Like it's just not, that's not what we looked like in Chicago. I can say that for a fact. So
they could just like run with it. Like,
literally they were like running with it. There was no need to, nobody was like stopping. They didn't have to stop at all. Like they could do each length unbroken with ease. Like that thing was just gliding. Like it was not like how it does on turf, the turf versus the carpet thing. Easy.
In Europe, you're basically pushing a torque tank in Europe. And here we're pushing loaded sleds.
Isn't it, I don't know, fair to say maybe this comment was tongue in cheek? Because it's so obvious the difference between European courses and U.S. courses that maybe this comment was tongue-in-cheek by this idiot.
I mean,
or is it
looking at like
I guess that's what I'm wondering.
Or were they looking at the final finishing time and not looking at how long it took guys to push the sleds? Because I was sitting in the warm-up area, which is like adjacent to the sleds in Houston, and I was watching people push sleds, and it was carnage. Like Ryland Shadeg was blowing up trying to push this sled. I mean, they're taking 3 breaks like on a single straightaway.
That is one interesting point. And I don't want to shelve this, what we're currently talking about, until later, but watching Rylan, it was apparent to me, and I feel if some other people did say it on the live stream, that it is the only station, the sleds, where it's a punishment to get there first, because you are put down at the farthest edge of the carpet and it is most likely to bunch and shift on you. Do you A, have a say in stopping in lane 2 or 3 if you want? And B, is it actually worth not getting to the sled push and pull first, at least the push, in order to avoid that nonsense that you could see his carpet and sled shifting where the others didn't?
I've been on that far edge 3 out of the 4 races that I've done, and it is always the worst lane. You could see it moving, bunching up. It is always the worst lane. They direct you to it, but other people have stopped. I always listen, but apparently I think I'm doing it wrong. I think I just pick my own lane from now on.
Yeah, so they do say like run all the way down, like they want you to go the end lane. But like if you were to break off early and pick like the second or third lane, they're not going to make you move. They're trying to basically just get the race to fill in appropriately, so it's not mayhem when everyone arrives.
What would you guys say to stay on track with this debate? Because you two are very fresh. You race in 2 countries and then 4 weeks apart, whatever it was. Just bullet point. Obviously, the sled debate, we've banged against the wall how many times, right? Like we understand that there's a big difference. We've seen it in the splits. What would you describe as like bullet point differences other than the sled between the European races you've run and the American races you've run? Are there any other ones? Or is it just go right to that?
One weird difference is they tend to have different floor surfaces there. Some of their convention centers are just, I don't know if it's just because they're like old. They're made with like kind of like this weird, almost like tile material on the floor. And so sometimes there's like a little bit of weird undulation or like slickness to it. So you have to choose like the right footwear for it to be good. I've had that in Leipzig and Maastricht. And every venue that we come across in the States, probably because we're racing in like really new convention centers, those are all like concrete floors of varying levels of slickness. But like if you were running like a Deca in West Palm, it's really, really slick, especially if there's any dust in there. It's like really, really slick. But like the venue in Houston and the venue in Chicago, those are like very good sound surfaces to run on.
Surface. That's the first thing. Only thing, like you wouldn't say generally course design, like it's a give and take on both sides of the pond. Some course designs are great. Some are faster. It seems like European courses historically are designed a little more slick, right? We get some slow courses over here, sled aside. So like anything like that jumps out. I know, Meg, you've raced overseas once, right? So you have the one sample size.
Yeah.
Both of us combined, like our experience overseas has always been on the grid, not on a regular course.
And
so those courses are going to be, they're slower. They're going to be like 90 seconds to 2 minutes slower as it is because you're running extra rock zones. And also just like all the turning around, like today, like the race in Houston was burpee broad jumps was out back, lunges were out back. Meanwhile, the race, you know, like if you're doing 5 turnarounds or whatever for each of these things, if you're racing in the grid.
All right. So Meg, question for that. The grid, it certainly has more transition time.
Yeah.
But does it potentially, is that a built-in rev limiter where you have less opportunity to go unbroken if you shouldn't be going unbroken on certain things like a burpee broad jump or a walking lunge, just that 2-second turnaround shakeout? Will that keep people from blowing up, or is it just a hassle for people like you and Miriam and Lauren who are just going to go unbroken no matter what?
I think it's a hassle. And it's like same with farmers, like the amount of times you're turning, like clearly we can all do the farmers unbroken pretty much and do them quickly. So just turning that many times is just, it's making it harder for people for sure. And then like same with the burpees and the lunges, I feel like I apologize about that. Having the turnarounds, I think automatically in your brain, like makes you ready to take a break. Like you cross that line, you have to stop, turn around. Like I think the way you're, without even realizing it, you're like, all right, this is like a little bit of a break. And then you might not go right into the next rep as fast as you would if it was like that long straightaway, or you just do it continuous. If that makes sense. So I do think you lose just little bits of time because of that.
Yeah,
I agree. I mean, like that turning around, like especially like a farmer's carry, you look at like the splits, like I think Dylan and I had the fastest splits in the farmer's carry in Chicago, and we were looking at like 2 minutes, 2 flat. Meanwhile, like, you know, in a normal race, you're going to be under 130. Like you're losing 30 seconds just on a station like that, which is a bizarre place to lose 30 seconds on compared to like a normal race. It's very similar with the Preppy Broad Jumps. Some courses, you know, like in New York when we ran it, the Preppy Broad Jumps was out back. So you are kind of getting that same experience of, you know, like having to turn around and start an extra burpee behind the line each time. Like that is an extra 2 reps. So, you know, if it's an extra burpee plus the step around the thing, you know, you probably are losing 8 seconds, you know, maybe 10 seconds over the course of that station just from the turnarounds alone. And then I agree with Meg. Like anything that's breaking my rhythm of moving forward is really it is telling your brain like take your foot off the gas. And the whole thing with Hyrox is like just maintain forward momentum the whole time.
The other thing too is that I think it's easier for our judges to screw up counting. And it's obviously really, as we know, it's really hard for us to be like counting 10 down and backs with farmers, for example. Like there was one point where my judge in Europe, he said I was at 8, but I was finished. And I was like, no, I'm done. And I knew I was done because I was also working next to the person next to me. We both started and pretty much finished at the same time. So like, they can screw up. And I know that happened to Bridget Brown where she ended up doing an extra down and back of the farmers. And that had a lot of time. Like, so being the grid, it makes it harder for us and the judges just with the counting.
I mean, the grid
adds that mental stress too. Like same with the lunges. Like I think I did like, you know, 2 and I had 2 more and I had 2 left and I was like, I thought it was done. And I was like, shit, you know what I mean? So
yeah, I suppose that anytime you take thinking out of it, it makes for a better race. But anytime you add thinking and counting into it, it makes for a more viewer-friendly arena. And so the tug and pull there, the give and take must be that the rep counters have to be impeccable. And we haven't yet shown an OCR or hybrid that we can handle that.
Right.
And like I had this in Chicago at the North American Championships. Like I'm in the lead. I just got into the lead in the farmers carries and I'm talking to my judge and I'm like, how many laps do I have left? Like how much more? And I have to like, every time I get there, I'm like, tell me my count. Like, I'm not sure. Like, am I at 6? Am I at 8? Like I was really unsure. I was like, I'll carry these all damn day, but I need to know how long.
Yeah. All I know is even if you're running and you take a 180-degree hairpin turn, slowing down and speeding up, even though it is slower, like 20 meters after you've turned around and continued running, like I'm more gassed because of just the switch. And even though it looks like a perceived rest, I don't think it is. Yeah. And it's time out. I think momentum, you need, an object in motion stays in motion. Breaking that, no matter how you argue it, is only going to slow the times down. What can you guys explain something real quick? I don't think everybody knows what the grid is. So I think people are like, what's the grid? What are they talking about? Do you want to explain that just real quick so everybody knows what you're talking about?
When we're racing in the championship format for Hyrox, instead of running the traditional course and the traditional rock zone, what they'll do is they'll designate a specific station. Typically, it's the sled pull station. They'll designate that station as a series of lanes that we will use in the race for all of our stations. So outside of the machine work, or even including some of the machine work, but you'll run into a ski erg station, you'll finish that, do your next run, and when you come in for your sled push, they'll have all the sleds set up. You'll go into the lanes in order that you arrived. You'll complete your sled push. You'll leave. You'll come back, and then the sled has been converted to a pull. And there you'll do your sled pull. And then when you come back, the sled will be gone. It'll be burpee broad jumps. When you come back, it'll be rower. Everything's always there, and so it allows. Yeah, you're staging it for viewers that are there, but I think also a better television or live broadcast viewing experience as well. And so it looks much closer to what like a CrossFit competition would look like in terms of working through lanes. And there's like designated taped off turnaround points and things like that to simplify it. And I think it provides a really clean viewer experience, but it also does put us into a more frantic headspace of like, you arrive at a station, you're pushing a sled, there's 3 people pushing it to your left, there's someone pushing it to your right, somebody comes past you on one side, everyone starts accelerating because they see people making moves. Like it does affect the race flow significantly, not necessarily in a bad way, but in a way where it can impact your race strategy.
Yeah,
everything happens in the same place.
For the separation.
Yeah.
It doesn't allow. So like half that midpoint to the end of the race where people are separated and they're on different stations in the normal races, like you're all there at the same time, like for the vast majority of it. So it's a little bit different on your brain for sure. The way you think people are closer than they actually are time wise, because they are next to you, but like they could be just starting and you're finishing. But
I mean, I find it to be like a lot more exciting.
Me too.
But it's much more exciting. Like it's much more engaging. But you do have these things like, it's not just like the turnaround at the farmer's carries. It is that re-acceleration. So if you think about it, instead of accelerating twice with your kettlebells, you're accelerating 10 separate times with your kettlebells. So like it is adding an additional element of fatigue to some of these stations. And
the deceleration costs you with the kettlebells as well. That stresses your quads more than keeping the weight moving.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, then of course you have to do like your little like helicopter turn with it and everything as well. And so your grip is more taxed because you're holding a longer time. It means your traps are more taxed. It means that your chest is being compressed and you're not getting as much oxygen. So it should be in theory a station you're recovering at, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it is.
Yeah. Well, it certainly changes the dynamic of what Hyrox is. So if you take this year's European Championships, North American Championships, the World Championships from 2022, and Euro and North American from 2022, in those 5 championships, do you know how many times the fastest time in the world, whoever ran that also won the championship? Out of those 5, so you have 10 possible winners. How many times was that winner the current fastest known time?
I'm going to assume once, and it was just Hunter in Vegas.
Yeah, and then just recently, Michaela.
Oh, Michaela. Sorry.
So still though, 2 out of 10.
Yeah.
So my question is, competing on the grid with these European versus North American courses, what does a fast time really mean in Hyrox these days? Because early on, it meant something. You had Imke was just the best and the fastest. Lucas was the best and the fastest. Hunter was the best and the fastest. Anyone who was the world record holder was going to win everything they showed up to. And now you have a 20% chance out of our last sample size of 10 of winning a championship race if you are the current world record holder. So what does popping a fast time mean in the sport right now? Meg, why don't you kick off?
Oh, I'm going to defer to Magida, actually.
Dave, why don't you kick off for us, please?
I'll kick off.
This was your first chance to talk smack, Meg.
Well, so I think like when you look at the way the races were, there used to be a wider spread in the caliber of athletes. And what we're seeing is that the people who are kind of like in that second tier have really upped their game. You're seeing a condensing of the field near the front. It's much more even. And so it goes from a race of just who can time trial the fastest into a race that's much more like a track meet where, when people are racing the mile, they never, like in the Olympics, they never really run the fastest mile. They really just, everybody's just kind of tactically racing off each other, and then someone's kind of kicking home. It's not necessarily like you're just kicking home, but
especially if they ran the mile in the Olympics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
We'll settle for 1,500 though. Continue.
Sure. Thanks, Bracken. Okay. The point being that the way the race plays out is going to impact finishing times, and people are going to be much more concerned with running a winning race rather than just going out there for a qualifier and time trialing their ass off.
Yeah. And it's also just like the way the times have been where people are so tight. It's like, I just feel like it's anyone's game. you know, like every race is different. As we've learned, like none of the courses are really exactly the same. So we're all kind of very similar across the board. And at these big races, these championship races, it's just like whose day it is, in my opinion. You know, I don't think Michaela is any better than I am, or Lauren is any better than Michaela. Like, I don't know that that's necessarily the thing. I think a lot of us have proven like we're all really strong competitors. I think it's just like who has the day, and also who just plays it right, as Magida knows, because he played it super right in Chicago.
After playing it super wrong in Maastricht, so.
Well, I played it wrong too for different reasons, but
and so like, I mean, if you look at like the women's field, like at the top of the women's field, like there is like a legitimate, like clearly head and shoulders above the rest of the field, top 3 to 4. Like I like to put Alondra into that field as well, because she is in striking distance late in races.
She's the link, and she links the rest and the best.
In Miriam too,
and Miriam, and so like in some ways, the way the races are playing out is like, you know, in Europe, Lauren just kind of punched everyone in the face and got away. And then it was like a little bit too much of a gap for Meg to close if she had not run that extra lap. I mean, like maybe, I don't know, but she did have that big solid lead at one point. And if you look at the way it played out for the women in Chicago, it was kind of a different race where Meg was like, I'm not going to let her get out there and punch me in the face right out of the gates. So you worked hard to stay with her, and Michaela just kind of waited until you guys weakened each other a little bit and then came by. So like tactically, there was a little gamesmanship going on amongst the three of you. And then Alondra nearly came in and scooped up Lauren's third place. And so it is interesting. Like it has turned into a much more tactical event than it used to be, where it used to just be like, who's the toughest, who's the fastest.
So to summarize, time doesn't really matter. If we're just going to summarize all of that, it means very little in the grand scheme of things. I'd say it's like, I'm the only one here who hasn't done a Hyrox. Although I obviously pay attention. I feel like I'm in the know for not actually stepping foot out there. I look at results now, at least this year I have, and I'm like, and I just move on, because unless everybody's under the same roof, it's kind of like what means what. I really feel that way, and maybe that's okay, but it doesn't hold weight with me anymore until everybody's in the same arena.
Right.
So we talk about like horses, not courses, right? This whole idea, and I think that really is significant. Like, you know, it's kind of like in my head, I don't look at like how fast certain people are. I'm like, okay, I've beaten this person. I haven't beaten this person. I've nearly beaten this person. I beat this person by a lot. Like I kind of look at it more like that on like head-to-head matchups. But at the same time, you know, I also look at courses and I cross-reference like, okay, like Kent ran a really amazing time in Houston. And I'm like, wow, that was incredible. But I also went and looked at like, who are the other people who ran like Elite 15 in Chicago and then also ran in Houston, and how do those times compare? And there's like 2+ minutes faster in Houston. And I go, okay, this helps me put the Houston time in a little bit of perspective as compared to my own time. And so after running the doubles race in Houston with my wife in the morning at 9:30, before the men had even raced, I turned to my wife and I said, I bet this course is about 2-ish, maybe a little more minutes faster than I ran in Chicago. So I said, I bet you if I ran this today fresh, I'd run about 57 flat, is what I told her. And then Kent comes in at 57.52 or 56.52. And I said, yep, validated. Like I feel validated on that.
So you think you would have finished with Kent?
Yes.
So you've made that jump to his level now?
Yes.
Well, I beat him. I mean,
yeah.
I didn't beat him at his best, but I know that a 59.11 on a grid course is a 57 low to 57 flat to under 57 on a regular course.
Kent's going
I agree with you because
right
Camilla and Chris ran significantly faster in Houston than they had in Chicago as well, like significantly faster. So I tend to agree with what you're saying, Dave.
Okay, so fix this for us. If we have to fix this, because we do, seeing as it is a time-based sport, but it's not yet a track.
Not for David and Meg. They got those auto qualifiers.
They got the auto
slow as they
qualifiers.
want
Hey,
the rest of the year. It doesn't matter.
So let's say we have to fix this thing. We have two people here who should have a pretty good idea on what to do. Do we start from the judging and how we qualify into races? Do we start from looking at the time end and decide how do we make it fair so that courses don't matter? Or do we start from the how do we make it precise? How do we make it exactly perfect and fair every time? Which end do you start from when you want to even this playing field out?
Now, this is something that I have given a great deal of thought to. And I recently sent a note to Mintra, who is one of the heads at Hyrox. She actually created the race itself, asking if Hyrox would be open to us assembling an athletes panel of 5 men and 5 women to work collaboratively with Hyrox, starting as soon as possible, in order to essentially improve upon and redevelop the rules and qualifying standards so that next year we can do this better. And some of my initial thoughts as it pertains to, like, what should we do? What changes should we make? Those include, I think that if you win at a venue, any venue in your region, you should get an automatic entry into the Elite 15 championship race in your region. So if I win a race in New York, I should automatically be into the North American Championship Elite 15. And that right there will solve some of the problem right away. So we don't have to go exclusively on time. We can say, okay, LA, New York, Chicago, Dallas, those winners are into this race. And now they all have a shot at earning an auto qualifier to the World Championships. I would also say you have to run a race in that region in order to race in that championship race. So like if I wanted to race in the European Championships next year, I would have to fly to London or Spain or wherever and qualify there. So I could either win an event or run an Elite 15 time there.
Okay.
And that the Elite 15, there would be one for each of those divisions, essentially those regions. And then after that, you pick the same number of people to qualify for Elite, I'd call it Elite 20 or Elite 30, to go into the World Championships.
So in theory, you qualify. How many U.S. events are there?
There were like 4 before we had the North American Championships.
So you get 5 auto qualifiers and then the next 10 fastest times in, something like that.
Yeah. And in Europe, where they're going to have like 15 races before it, you just take the venue winners. And then if you want to add the next 5 fastest
and
times.
And there's a roll down maybe.
Yeah. And there's because guys are going to win multiple events, you know?
Right. So then you take your North American 15 and your European 15. Do you feel that 3 is an appropriate qualifier, or would you think it should be more like 5 from each and then next 10 fastest times? Much like the track world.
I'd take 5 from each.
5 from each.
I don't see what the harm is in letting the guys who beat everybody else on the big one. Like, I don't see what the harm is in letting more of those guys in.
Not to throw a wrench in this. Oh, sorry, but they don't have plans of expansion, right? We're just going to keep this Euro and America centric because I mean, obviously,
there's already races in Hong Kong.
As far as qualifying goes, so all those guys can get in as time qualifiers or come to one of these major
They can
events.
get in as time qualifiers right now. So what you'd have to do is set up like a Asia regional or something like that eventually. But in the meantime, I think what you can do is give them spots in the European Championship.
Yeah. Okay. I just think they'd be foolish. I mean, why wouldn't they? Obviously, you have to get through this year's World Champs. It's too late to fix it. The ball's already rolling, right? But my curiosity is, right, like we like to bitch a bit about some of these decisions that have been made, but is anybody hearing it who matters? And we talk about them not being in the know, really, like the athletes understand the sport much better than those who organize it. And obviously that's true based on the decisions they've made as far as rules and qualifications. But are they hearing any of this, or is the only way they're going to hear this is by an athlete panel? That's like really hear why the system needs to be fixed. That's what I want to know.
I think they are, but they also just spent a whole offseason changing all the qualification standards, finally adding auto qualifiers by top 3ing at your, regional championship. Like that just happened. Then they, they never, the way they've talked about it, they never had any intention of making the North American championships just for North Americans and the European just for Europeans. Like they really just wanted them to be 3 big invitationals. They just
labeled it wrong.
They labeled it wrong, and then and I don't think that was the right decision. Like I think they should be separate, but they also put the events way too close together, so there was no time for anyone to, like if you were qualified for both. If you were qualified, you couldn't qualify for the second one between them. There was not the chance to do that. So if they took those races and spaced them out 4 months, then you could have a different pool of athletes in the system that they had. But they made it so that, like, these are who qualified, and they're the only people who get to run at this, and the only people with a shot at auto bids. And even though I have an auto bid, I just feel like that's not right.
So Meg, how would you start? Would you start with working on the time aspect, or would you start on let's fix the venues so that time is a legitimate metric?
I don't know that we're ever going to get that. I don't know if we're ever going to have the venue issue be fixed, just because obviously that it's money, and that's like a huge part of it. And it's just like, it would be cool to be able to revisit the same venues. Like I know we were in Chicago, obviously it was on the grid, but like when I raced in Chicago in November, that was not the same venue. So like, it would be cool to get to revisit especially in the bigger cities, like the same venue. And then times are more comparable, even, for us. Like I know I ran this at last year at the same venue or whatever. You could compare a little more easily. But yeah, I think either it's got to be bigger pool, so like the top 30, or like I do like the idea of it being like you do a regional and it's like the top 5 or the top 10 at whatever open, whatever. But yeah, they definitely just like labeled these championships wrong, and it's been such an interesting, like, trying to explain it to people. I'm like, no, it's like the Australian Open or like the US Open or whatever, and people seem to like still not. But I do agree, like there's been some times even lately that have broken in to that top 15 that could have been at the North Americans had they been spaced out a little bit more. So
yeah. So there's one clear fix to make the times all equivalent, and that's to remove the sleds. Because anytime you have a friction-based obstacle or station, it's dependent upon the location. You can make 1,000 meters anywhere. You can make 100 wall balls anywhere. That's fine. Distance based is okay, but the friction is really what sets this off. And that's the easiest way, is just get rid of the sleds and replace it with something else that is standardized. But the sleds have become the single most, like, they're synonymous with Hyrox. If you had to think of one thing that represents Hyrox, it's the sleds or it's the 100 wall ball finishers. And even that's more CrossFit. Sleds aren't really a big part of CrossFit. So it's the one thing that embodies CrossFit. I mean, that embodies Hyrox. And yet it's the one thing that's causing the biggest issues. So if this sport has to evolve or has to change, how is that addressed?
I don't think that that's necessary. I just think that we need to stop looking at this race like all the courses are the same, because they're not. I mean, even if you were to change that, you have courses that are 2 laps, courses that are 3 laps, courses that are 4 laps. And that in of itself is going to change the finishing times as much as a sled variance can affect the finishing time. I mean, just look at that course that Meg and I ran in New York. 4 laps per 1,000 plus an extra turn, 17 turns, 90-degree turns per 1,000. The amount of deceleration and reacceleration, not just the amount of time that you're losing on that actual turn, but the amount of energy you're expending. It's so dramatic. And as opposed to a course where you can just get out and roll for, 100 meters before the next turn, we were turning every 60 meters or something. It's crazy.
And
you're not even at top speed before you're turning again.
There's a lot of courses that I think maybe weren't 1,000.
Yes. Yes.
So that's the thing, because like if you're -4 minutes just in the run 2 weeks apart,
Here's looking at you, Glasgow.
like I don't gain that much fitness in 2 weeks, but maybe I'm just the weirdo over here. But
yeah, I'd say that's probably true.
Yeah.
We had an argument made to us that the turns don't matter, the lap size doesn't matter, because if that were true, indoor versus outdoor track times would be way more different. Now I'll open the floor to you guys.
Those turns are
let me finish here. Let me finish.
Okay.
I'm the captain here.
No, we believe that's what you believe now, Bracken. So we need to.
I'll let you
that
finish
right
that. But just the low hanging fruit on that is that's comparing outdoor track to indoor.
Exactly.
Indoor track, they have conversions 300 meter to 200. So turns absolutely matter. But what else are people missing about this run setup that outside of the obvious, which is if it didn't matter, they wouldn't have conversion times between 200 and 300 meter tracks.
So one thing that I'll say is like the way Hyrox is, like some of the venues, they do a better job of adding an extra gate. So instead of turning straight 90 degrees, they have like a 45-degree gate and then another 45-degree, and you can kind of work that corner a little gentler. They also have venues where, like in New York, you come around a turn and your in is on the other side of the turn. So you're hairpinning in and you're hairpinning out of that rock zone. That is significant time when you're talking about 16 times you're hairpinning, as opposed to a venue where—
Chicago is a perfect example of that. The in is on a corner. You're literally you're turning like you're decelerating so much trying to turn into the in and not wipe out too. And also
the people who don't get out of inside lanes. So on a straightaway, you can slalom in, and on a turn, they just bump you out around.
Right.
Yeah. And it's like, it would have been so simple to, in Chicago, have the in be at the other end where you're coming on a straightaway and you just naturally turn into it and you don't even break stride. But they seem to, at that venue, love to put that hairpin turn in there. And then there's other venues where you don't encounter that. And so, well, you have to assume that you're losing 3 seconds on a hairpin turn. But I think that's logical. And then the energy expenditure, again, you're talking about maybe a minute lost, 45 seconds to a minute lost just on hairpins. And it's just a very strange thing that some venues have them and some don't. Some venues have weird run tracks that go in like S shapes and things like that. The New York course, what they had planned for us was before the hurricane showed up, was an indoor-outdoor course that involved a series of snaking turns on each of 3 laps, while also, this is the kicker, you would have had to go up and down a ramp or a flight of stairs in order to get in and out of the venue.
So, Kirk, what does this all scream to you? What's the easiest fix for Hyrox to make everything equal?
Well, obviously, a placement-based or a championship-based qualifier, hands down. We do it in every other sport in the damn world. You got to qualify by earning your place in throughout the season by how you finish. It doesn't matter if the Packers beat the Bears by 40 or 2, they still win in advance. And the same thing happens in Hyrox. Like you weed people out, make them prove their consistency, and make them finish. Every other sport, it's acceptable. Like, it's not that big of a deal, right? That's how this sport should work, especially, guys. Like, I didn't even realize, I knew the courses were discrepant, but like hearing all the nuances of course, and now that we're listing them off, like this is wrong and this is wrong and this changes things and this changes things. Time is the last word that should be used to qualify anybody to anything.
Well, imagine this, Kirk. I want you to imagine, you're a Spartan race guy. I want you to imagine that there are 2 sprints, and one of them is a sprint in like Laughlin or Arizona, that one of those sprints there, those super fast ones, or like that old sprint out in Seattle, that Seattle sprint, Bracken, the one that like just take like 25 minutes. And they're like, hey, we're going to do a time-based qualifier this year for world championships. So we're going to have whoever runs the fastest time in your next sprints, you're getting in. And Bracken, you go run that one in Seattle, or where was it? Kelowna?
Washougal.
Okay. So you're going to go run Washougal. Kirk, you're going to go, run Palmerton.
No,
and whoever has the fastest time, you're getting into world championships. Okay, how's that going to go? Because Kirk's going to go run like a 1 hour sprint, and Bracken's going to run a 25-minute sprint. It's obviously not that extreme, but to a degree, there is a level of inevitability to, like, there's a reason why there are only 3 Americans currently qualified to run the Hyrox World Championships on the men's side. And even on the women's side, like, we have more, but it isn't as balanced as it should be.
Well, and of course, like, you look at Hyrox, you say, okay, well, every box is being checked at every race. They're doing all of the things, and it's always on flat terrain, and it's always in an arena with a roof over its head. And from afar, you go, well, of course, on Spartan race, you're not going to qualify a mountain course versus a flat course. Those are so different. Duh. Yeah. But, like, you actually have to look at Hyrox venues and setup the exact same way. You could get away with this 2 years ago, 3 years ago, when the field wasn't as condensed. We saw the right people shake out and end up in the right race at the end in general, because that's where the density of the field was at. The best rows to the top, no matter what. But now there's too many of you. There's too many of you. And now it needs to be sussed out correctly.
And last year, I missed running at World Championships in Las Vegas. I missed out by like 16 seconds or something crazy. And it was because the only qualifier that I got to run in the whole second half of the year was a race in London that I had never been to a venue that had more than 15 people per heat. And I arrived in London and they had 43 people per heat. And the result of that is, like, the run course they said was accurate length. The rock zone they said was the accurate length. The difference, what was unmeasured, is the space within the zone, the workout zone itself was massive, because now you're running through an endless row of sleds, an endless row of ski ergs and rowers, because they have 50 of them instead of 16. And so everything you're running through, you're just running further. And that time accumulates over the course of a race.
What if I just want to call bullshit on all this and say, I don't think it
sound
matters?
Like a European guy.
Because, well, no.
He's going to Europe.
No, I think that Meg's getting hosed here on this whole conversation. We had Meg, Lauren, Alondra, Camilla, Tara, Bridget. Who else do we have? Vivian. I might not have said Lauren. So we have 7, 8 women who all managed to do this under the same roof that you guys did. But it didn't happen for the men, but the women just got it and pulled it off just fine. We have Ryan Kent and Hunter McIntyre have both run sub 57 on courses where no one else broke an hour. Like they had the same disadvantage as everyone. So what if the case right now is just that the women are significantly better in the US than the men are in the US right now, or they're significantly more focused on Hyrox than the men? The men all went after DECA. Is the argument, is the argument more that maybe the Europeans have a point? Everyone had the opportunity. Meg, how many races did you need to pop one to get a qualifier?
Technically, I qualified in my first one.
Yeah.
But I had the mishap and I wanted a real time. So then I did a second.
Mm-hmm.
She's also finished top 3 in both majors. So it's kind of like an outlier.
True. But in that case, Lauren's an outlier and Alondra's an outlier. Michaela. So we have all these people that are doing it in the US, and we have a real lack of the men right now. So I think you guys have all you've all made a very valid point of all the reasons that it's correct. But why are the women so much better than the men in the US right now?
So it's an interesting question. And the question is, are the women in the US better than the men in the US, or are the women in the US better than the women in Europe? Because that is also an interesting question. Like, who are the dominant forces in Europe right now?
That's a different way of saying the same thing.
No, it isn't. Because the question is the men's field in the United States weak, or is the women's field in Europe weak? Those are two different things.
Could be, except that the U.S. women have broken the world record this year and the men haven't. The U.S. women amongst themselves are going unbroken on wall balls and doing certain things that the men aren't. So is it that, I mean, you can say, are the women over there weaker than our women here? Are the men over there stronger than our men here? But I think it's the same argument. Why are the U.S. women more successful right now?
Hold on. Are you playing devil's advocate right now just to be
I truly believe this.
Starter?
No, because David won North American champs, but if he hadn't,
well, Dylan Scott took second.
Then Dylan
He's
would
American
have.
as well.
Right.
So I'm confused. I don't have skin in the game, but I don't know if your argument stands up, Bracken, and we don't disagree often. But
and I'd also argue,
I'm not exactly sure.
If you took me out of that race and reran it again a week from now, Ryan Kent would win that race.
Yeah.
So theoretically, looking at the world championships, like the American men that we currently have qualified could go 1, 2, 3.
Yeah. Could.
It's what I'm saying is not just could, like you wouldn't be like completely shocked if it happened. You wouldn't be like, wow, that's completely crazy that happened. Now, it's not necessarily what's going to happen or what you expect to happen, but it wouldn't blow your mind.
Is that with or without Hunter in the mix?
Without Hunter in the mix. If Hunter was in the mix, we could go 1 through 4.
What does the lady in the room think?
Yeah, we just heard the guy say why you're not better. Tell me why you are better.
We should be the ones talking.
Well, okay. Yeah, well, if time is irrelevant, then I had a world record, but I guess it doesn't matter, you know? But I think I don't know. I think the women in the US are overall stronger. I really do. I think I think some of the girls are getting hosed a little bit on courses over here. I mean, Vivian Tefudo was a roll down and she came like Chicago. Amazing performance for her. Incredible, unexpected. I think she's an amazing athlete. I didn't expect her to be. She was next to me on sled pull and I was like, holy shit. You know, like I was psyched for her. And I think that could have her performance there at a championship, seeing some of the European women perform in Maastricht that I expected to be way up there that weren't. I think that says a lot. Does that make sense? There were some women in Maastricht that I expected to be a big threat that were not. And then some of the U.S. women in Chicago that, not saying I didn't think they would be a threat, but they exceeded, I think, everyone's expectations and probably their own coming in.
You also named something very interesting, which is the roll down spots.
Yeah.
I only got to run. People didn't know this because I raced in both races, Europe and North American championships, but I only got to run in those races because I received a roll down spot. I was not a top 15 time. I was the 16th time. Yet I was given spots in Europe and then here, and I'm the North American champion. And that should tell you all you need to know about how flawed the system is. There, if everyone had accepted their invite, I would not have even been allowed to race. What is the argument from there? It's just a broken system.
Yeah. No, it's a good point.
So, Meg, you sidestepped that nicely by not talking about why the U.S. women are better. Is it a specification thing? Are you guys specifying Hyrox on your schedule and training after it? Is it because the females come from a power CrossFit training style and the men come from endurance?
No, I do.
What is it?
No, you guys talked about this in one of your other Race Brain podcasts. And to be honest, I fully agree with you. I think we do more shit. We're doing more across the board, like variety. I think you guys nailed it. I never did CrossFit until this year after I did New York. Started going to CrossFit, but I am a power lifter. I was a Division I runner and I've run for years. So I think it's adding a lot of those mixed modalities in. And I know that obviously, Magida, you do all that kind of stuff as well. But I think we see a lot of the other men are very, very specific in their training and they only do Hyrox stuff. And that might be a detriment. I mean, Lauren's doing CrossFit. Michaela was a CrossFit Games athlete. Alondra does CrossFit and they're all running and they're all doing, she's in the right. Miriam, like, look at these girls are coming from, I think a lot of the men are coming from the endurance background pretty strictly. And I think a lot of the women are coming from this power strength side, other than maybe myself. I'm kind of maybe more of the outlier in the top women. Obviously, Michaela has the CrossFit endurance aspect, but they're pretty much the women are coming from strength. that have been the consistent performers in these 2 championship races. You know, Miriam, Alondra, myself, Michaela, Lauren. And then some of the girls that are more runners didn't perform as well as they might have been seated.
So certainly, I think we see a difference in performance, like endurance-based athletes. Like a lot of the European guys, I think, are coming from like a bit of a running. Like Tim Venus comes from a running background, but you're seeing like an interesting mix. Like Alex Roncevic was a swimmer, Tobias was a runner, Sandbach was a soccer player, and so you're seeing an interesting blend of athletes at the top from over there. But the one thing that has been interesting is that every time they come to the States, they struggle more on our courses than they've struggled on their own. That's just something that
yeah, I think
we've seen the same the other way as well, because we're just not used to the way their courses run.
I don't know. Lauren and I did great.
You guys did. Yeah, you did great.
We all did good over there. I mean, Tara did well. Like, no, but I do agree with you, because I guess my point is the women are showing we're more consistent. We've been more consistent across the board and how we are running in all these races, even the qualifying races to get into these championships. We were all throwing down some really good times, and then proved in the championships that like those are legit, but it seems like obviously there was a huge shakeup from the European championships to the North American championships for the men, whereas the women is the same top 4, just in a slightly different order. So.
Rich talked about something the other day that I think is really valid. And it's that the men need to stop racing based on the sleds. That there's just way too much emphasis put on the sleds. It seems like the female field right now races Hyrox, and the men are putting the sleds on a pedestal. And it's this strange thing. I don't know why it is, but the European men come over here to prove that their sleds are better. And the US men come over there to prove that if we don't have to rest on the sled, we can go faster. And they end up all shooting themselves in the foot because they just can't get their mind off the sled instead of, how do I appropriately balance every section of my race? And you saw Dave and Dylan didn't care. They didn't get into a measuring contest. They just said, I'm going to run my splits on this sled the same way I'm going to run my splits on everything else. And it worked. Why are the women not caught up in that? And why are the men, Dave, why is this becoming a battle with the men? And Meg, why do the women not care about any one specific station?
The one word is probably ego or balls. Or some kind of combination of the two. Guys, like they get up there. I think everyone wants, Hyrox is somewhat a race, and it's somewhat also a test of your strength, your endurance, your strength, your grit, your toughness, right? It's like there's somewhat it's also just that. It's like this physical, mental journey. And I think to an extent, some guys get out there to the sleds and they're like, this is the part that requires the most strength. I'm going to show everybody how strong I am here. And part of this might be because you get all your splits at the end of the race and everyone wants to look at like you're ranked by every station. You're like, I don't want to be the 11th fastest sled. I want to be the fastest sled. And I think there is some of that coming into play.
I think Meg's balls drop when she goes 100 straight on wall balls.
Yeah.
So Meg, why does it not matter? Why do you all seem to hammer correctly every station?
I think that we've learned that it comes down to the last couple stations for us. My top times, like when I look and see like where I stack up in the field, it's my last 3-4 stations. And I'm usually between 1 and 3 on all those things. And I think that's been where for us in our races, the difference that seems to be where the race is changing. And that's where it's kind of starting to where you can see maybe a clear winner or like it's shifting a little bit. Does that make sense? I think the guys like, I think it comes down to also just like that difference between men and women where like maybe we're playing the long game a little bit and we're being a little smarter, no offense, but
no, that's the argument I'm making.
Like girls
I'm making the same argument you are.
Even when we're like kids, it's like girls think about consequences, you know, like boys just go and do shit and they learn the consequences after they get hurt or whatever happens. And I think that that's literally just what's happening here is we've figured out how to play this right. And I mean, and Michaela proved that too. Like she was pretty far behind until she's got a crazy sled pull. And that always gets her like back in the game. But like she was pretty far back. And then same thing, like it's just I don't know. It's like brains over brawn kind of a thing, if that makes sense.
How much of this is Hunter's fault for creating the archetype for how you win a Hyrox on the men's side?
It's interesting, right? So like I heard Rich talk about this and Hunter like wins the sled and then he wins all these things, but like it's not just that he was killing the sled because he wasn't running like absurd sled times. What he was doing good sleds and he actually was pacing himself well. And so like I think about my first time running Hyrox where I trash talked my way into the invitational. Then we go and Hunter and I have been talking shit to each other for a month leading up to it. And then I'm out there. I catch him on the run going into sled push. He hits it. I hit it a second or two behind him. And then we both drop these monster sled efforts where he's pushing it. I'm pushing it past where he's pushing it. He's braking. He's pushing it past where I'm pushing it. And we got into this like, who's going to crack first situation. And when I came off it, I was like, oh no, I really did overdo it. And then what happens is he gets into the sled pull. He had used the right amount of energy. And then he didn't do a pull that was stunningly fast. He compared to like what I do now, he just pulled it comfortably. And I was over my head in water. You know, the water was over my head at that point. It was just, you know, I think this happens to a lot of people is like you get caught up in the little battle, but I don't know that I've seen that many races where Hunter has absolutely demolished both sleds. I think more so he's pulled away at the second sled.
I think it's a product of ourselves. We give this way too much credence. We need to talk and bitch about things. We have a podcast about it called Race Brain, and we need to fill the time. And you go to the low hanging fruit and you look at glaringly obvious differences across the pond and you look at where things matter. And I think it's like Bracken and myself and Rich and Jack, we're as much to contribute as anything, and we feed the monster. And then pretty soon it's in everybody's psyche because they all listen to this stuff. They all talk amongst themselves. We just created it all together in a big conglomerate, and now it is what it is. And I also think that because the top women are notably better than the chase pack, we will call it, let's say 4 or 5, whatever you want to call it. Most aren't as desperate as early to assert themselves as the men. I feel like sometimes can get caught up in jumping to the next level or proving themselves early. And that becomes the problem more than anything. Yeah. Whereas the woman, like they know it's going to sort itself out. Like Meg knows I'm going to be on the podium, whether I slow play early or I go out hard, like I'm going to end up in the same spot. Whereas like men 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, they're like, I can get on that podium. I freaking know it, but I have to do it one way, and that is stay attached. And I think that's mostly what's happening, to be honest. And they're wrong. Staying attached is absolutely the wrong thing to do if you're trying to break through. You should play like Magida did and Dylan did, but it's tough not to, right? And so that's where I think the problem lies in the men's field, or that issue arises.
I don't disagree. I think there's also the fact that there are like 10 guys who could theoretically win the race. You know,
yeah, like the men's times are way tighter. So, I mean, if you're one of those guys, and I probably fall into this too, if I'm 10th and I'm only, you know, it's like 35 seconds between me and like, you know, second, like I'm going to obviously think like, okay, well, that could be me. You know what I mean? On my best day.
Exactly.
So that's definitely coming into play for the men. Whereas the women, even though we are close, there is a lot more space even in the times, you know, 30, 40 seconds, not like 2, you know, like you see these top 30 times for the men, they're so tight. So definitely comes into play.
So I believe that we are at the point of this sport where you're starting to see some parity. Like you're talking about, the times are starting to clump up. Championships are becoming tactical. That is a clear sign of a sport filling out. You do not have tactical races until they need to be. If someone is the clear best and they can run away with it, they do that because that's easiest for them. They can get out of sight and then coast. It's what we saw with OCR for years until it filled out. It's what we saw with Hyrox early on. It's what the marathon was and what the 10K was. Now everything's sit and kick because it's too risky to try to go out because everyone's so close to you. So when you get to that point in a sport, there's only two options. The first is to double down on what the sport is and invest in getting everyone better and bringing in new life. Like track and field does not change events. It's been the same 10,000 meters since the dawn of time. People just get faster at it and they bring in new life, and then they try bringing milers up or marathoners down, anything like that. And then you have sports that keep trying to find new distances or different things to invest into, like CrossFit, for example, will never repeat the entire CrossFit Games. They'll bring just back the fan favorite, but it is always varied so that you can always have this something new. I think we're at that point with Hyrox where we have to decide, is Hyrox this right here? These 8 stations. Is this Hyrox, or is Hyrox a constantly evolving creature? Are we going to have to wait for the next generation of athletes to come in to raise it? Or are we going to raise it intentionally every year or two by switching things up? What is your take, first of all, both of you?
The main event probably does not need to change. But with that said, like if you're going to continue to sell, one, to the masses, and two, expand your pool of audience who's interested in racing in it, you're going to have some options. So like I've always proposed things like Hyrox Reverse, where you open with 100 wall balls before you do anything else, or Hyrox Roulette, where you don't know what the order of the event's going to be until you arrive.
Heck yeah.
Ooh, I like that a lot.
Like you just show
Did
up.
we discuss all this? Are you sniping this from one of our past episodes? Because this has been
pushed this out
about
like a year ago with Rich.
So we sniped from you.
And then we've talked about, like I was talking with Mintra about some different concepts of what you can do. Like, can you add additional stations? Can you add, or like that are a little bit different? Like things that are simple movements. Like if you were to add a barbell, could you add deadlifts or things like that? We've talked about that, and we talked about the idea of shortening the run distances between for certain events to make it more CrossFitter friendly. The idea that I have now is add a doubles race. That's a family one where you can push your kid in a stroller. We have like running strollers, and there's a place to dock them at each station. You
might be limiting your participant numbers there, but I like the idea.
Yeah, but like you might actually get a wave or two out of it. Like it'd be kind of fun.
So are you saying keep the championships the same, but add more highlight special events throughout?
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
So you think these 8 are the best iteration of what we should see out of Hyrox? This is the sport.
This is it. And if you chose to add additional championships, you could do it the way that DECA has, where they have 3 separate events. I wouldn't necessarily have them all have the exact same stations, but you could have 3 distances. You could change some of the stations, and then you could have this could be Hyrox Classic, and you could have like Hyrox Heavy, and you could have Hyrox, whatever. You could change a few other ones.
I like that.
Hyrox Heavy. I like that idea too. I also
might not want to see it.
Opening with wall balls. Like, could you imagine the women who are going unbroken on the 100 wall balls at the end, just opening with them? Like Miriam would do like a 2-minute or under, like 100 wall balls. It'd be ridiculous.
It's nuts. And then she'd be running from the front.
Yeah, and then do like skiing at the end. Sleds and skiing at the end would be shit. So I like that idea.
And your legs are torched from lunging second. Like it could be really fun.
That's right. Yeah, this could be interesting. I like the idea of doing Hyrox twice because I feel like I'd smoke it. I feel like I could just double Hyrox. I feel like I'd win.
Lauren said the same thing on our podcast last week.
Dang it. I got racer in that too. Criminy.
You know what's funny about this is the big appeal, because we all came from like in this realm from like an OCR background, like who already in the community, right? This type of community. It was like, oh, we just crave consistency and we want to be able to compare our times and know what we're getting into. And Hyrox finally provided us with this. Like, we can compare times. It doesn't matter where we're racing. Like, we have the same thing every time. And here we are like 3 years in and we're like, we need more things now. We need different things now. But the very appeal of Hyrox was the opposite of what we're discussing. It was the fact that it was the exact same every time and people got off on that, right? We could actually work and improve and see that on paper, which we now know is not true. But I agree with you, by the way, we need more offerings, but I think it's just funny because that was the big catch early.
Yeah.
It's just also funny because we also just came to an agreement that like you can't compare times.
Well,
like,
exactly. I agree.
They're completely not comparable.
It's perfect.
But we thought it was in the beginning.
We were all specific sport athletes who didn't ever totally conform. And so we found hybrid or OCR because we wanted a little more or a little less standardized, and then we get there and we're still pretty dichotomous. So we love that, but we want a little bit more consistency so we can compare ourselves. And then we get that and we're like, damn it, I just want some inconsistency here because that's been us since we were kids. It's crazy. Yeah. So here's my proposal. Once or twice per year, I'd love to see not an oddball event, but some sort of championship invitational. And it would be the choice. Whoever enters the rock zone first chooses what station you go to.
That's really cool.
Let's say Meg wants to get out hot, and she said she comes in and signals that we're heading to wall balls, and everyone has to go to wall balls. And whoever gets done with the next run next comes in, and they have 7 available to them to choose from. And so you are rewarded for getting to a run first. I would love to see a choice based, just like once or twice per year.
But if you're the leader, then you just pick in your perfect order. Like
win.
Meg goes to her first best station. She's going to win that if it's her best station. And then she's going to be outright. And she's just going to cherry pick the whole way.
Or she's going to choose what's going to smash other people.
So
you might come in and go sled push, sled pull, lunges, wall ball, row, ski, and then who cares about the rest?
Yeah.
I personally would love that order, by the way. That would be great. When everyone's on dead legs, love that. Do you think that Sandbatch would come in and choose wall balls first? Just get it out of the way. I got to get this out of the way.
Damn, you're going there.
Could be a short day at the office for him.
I mean, I'm not talking shit. Like, I think that's actually like probably the smartest thing for him to do. Just get them done.
It'd be tricky because a lot of people could go unbroken, but at what cost 4 stations later?
Huge cost. Here's the question I had. Can I pose something? Meg, how do you feel about the women's wall balls being double scaled? Like lighter and lower. Like I know you're not super, super tall, so like lower.
No, but I go ass to grass, so it doesn't matter that I'm not the tallest. I'm going deeper than anyone else, literally every time.
So I guess what I'm asking
they give you points for that?
100. I should absolutely get points for that. I should get 10 seconds cut off because my form, you never have to question my form. That's for sure.
So like when you're working out, do you throw to a 10-foot target often?
Yes. I've been doing some of your seated stuff with a heavier ball too, and that fucking sucks.
It sucks. It's really hard.
It's terrible.
Make it strong though.
Well, that's what we're trying to do. But yeah, I do a 10-foot target a lot actually.
So I guess what I'm saying is like one of the things is we're seeing like a lot of the women, not just like 1 or 2 women, like a lot of the women do 100 unbroken. And part of this is because they're really good at wall balls. And part of this is because it's double scaled where they're lighter and they're lower. And so they're not only are you guys doing them unbroken, but you're doing them much faster because you're throwing them to a lower target. So like your cycle rate is really, really high. And that's impacting the times like really significantly. So I was curious if you had any thoughts that either the ball should be 2 pounds heavier, 16 pounds, or how many kilograms is that? 7 kilograms, or that the target should be higher. Or if you think
I'm gonna say that I don't think the outcome is gonna be that much different.
No, I don't either. I'm just curious.
I think that if you upped it to a 20-pound ball, even at a 9-foot target, then that's, I think, where the game would change.
Yes.
Because when I do a 20-pound ball, I can do 50, and then I'm taking a break or whatever the case may be. But I'm definitely not doing 100 unbroken at a 20-pound ball, even at a 9-foot target. I mean, So if you upped it 2 pounds, or if you upped the target to 10 pounds and kept it at 14, I think we're honestly, like, the times are obviously going to be a little slower, but I think the outcome is going to be the same. I don't think
You
that's
do 100
enough.
unbroken. You'll still do 100 unbroken.
I think so. But if it was a little bit more significant, 20 pounds, 9 foot, or 20 pounds, 10
pounds.
foot. That's
I don't think it should be the exact same as the men's either. Like, I don't think that's the right
Why
solution.
not?
But like, well, because you aren't the same for the sandbags and you aren't the same for the sleds. So like, I don't think they need to like make that the one item where they are. I
kind of want to do a men's pro weight Hyrox at some point.
I think you should be allowed to as well. I think it would be good. I think if you look at any other ball sport, which I think this has to be compared to for wall balls, outside of softball, where they do change everything, right? Basketball, soccer, hockey, things like that. Goal size is the same. Hoop size is the same. Ball size is different.
Hoop height.
That's it. It's just they only scale one. And I think that that's appropriate, because if you get into scaling the height, a foot is terrible. Because if you look at the average height for the women, it's something like 5'4", and for the men, it's something like 5'10". So you have a 6-inch difference in height, but a 1 foot difference in so that scale is bad. So I think it's the easiest just to scale like they do everything else. Take 66% of the weight or whatever it's going to be, 70% of the weight, 75. I don't care what you choose, just make it consistent. But double scaling, I do think, is incorrect. But I also think that the women, if you look at their form, are just better than the men at wall balls. And really and to Meg's credit, she has impeccable form. But we also talked about this before. The better your form is, the faster your wall balls are, because you get to bounce out of the bottom. Yeah. And the people who decelerate and stop above parallel are actually only hurting themselves.
That's why for me, I want to do the wall balls first, because that is not going to blow me up, because I'm not dead stopping. I'm using the bottom to
stretch reflex.
Pop me back up. Exactly.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's the CrossFit.
Because it's interesting. What's interesting now is if you look at the wall balls, Meg, if you were to throw it off the men's target,
dude, I do half the time on accident.
They can, and I have seen them no rep people.
Yeah.
No rep women for hitting the men's target. You're like, wait. She did more work and you punished her for it.
Based on how this past weekend's wall balls went, I would say that is a bit extreme.
Oh, you mean given how they do not they
how
don't
poor
no
the
rep
judging
anybody
was.
for depth?
Yeah.
But this has been an
if you're no repping because someone's going too high, but you're not no repping for depth, that is a problem.
Mm-hmm.
It sucks when you have these men, mostly men, some women, who do the gray zone squats, where because you have a quad bump and a hamstring bump there.
I was just going to say that. It's the hamstrings.
Yeah, and they look at one thing and not the other, and the quads look bad, but it's really the hamstring. Or you look at it's the gray zone reps that are killing this sport right now in terms of people going off on them. And it's a shame that someone could be punished for being too good at it.
Yeah, and I don't really know who specifically on the men's side you're referring to, but I have been at events where I'm like, ooh, like there's a lot of dicey reps going around here. And the thing is that I feel like Hyrox got real intense about the burpee form to the point that like they're like yelling at people for doing stuff that isn't even wrong. But that there's like no monitoring of the wall balls like at all.
Yeah.
How do you fix it?
I mean, you just have to do a better job of training judges, but most of these judges are volunteers. Like a lot of them are like 16-year-old kids or like someone who's just waiting to get their free race at the end of the day. Or, it's the same issue that Spartan had with judges with, to an extent, it's just volunteers. Maybe you pay them, but like it's, you need to have like members of the actual Hyrox staff on it. But even then, like people are going to vary in how strict they're judging. It's tough. CrossFit's managed to figure it out, right?
How many instances can you think of on men's and women's side? I don't have an answer to this, where judging made a difference in placement. Is the outcome still going to be the same? And we always got to find shit to bitch about because it's worthwhile to bitch about, right? There needs to be a standard. It needs to be upheld. Can you think of times in which it was clearly affected the result?
Meg, she's been judged very strictly on how many laps she's run before and lengths of certain exercises.
For real though, can you? I guess I'm curious if it's ever actually. I mean, maybe in the open waves and all those, it's filtered down. Of course, I would imagine.
Well, if times are how you're getting into stuff, and then there's poor judging happening, and times are how you qualify, then that's an issue because.
One no rep or not no rep could be the difference between getting
absolutely.
In or not,
it really could.
And I think you're getting more not no reps.
Game of the person. So if you do 10 no reps in a row, you know what I mean? Like that's impacting you mentally like crazy. And then the person next to you, like that's a whole different, that could add a ton of time, A, but B, it could also just blow you up mentally. And then like you're not even in the conversation anymore.
I will say this before Dave goes. Dave, I do want to say this. We do not know who's getting no repped unless you're there in person. That is the one issue right now because people are watching. It's like not depth. That one was better, not depth. But you don't know. You can't see the count. Right. So I think someone did like 117 wall balls in Chicago, and online they were ripping that person. Well, they might have been no rep 17. You saw the form fix. Yeah. There's a good chance it's because what you can't hear is the volunteers saying no rep. Got to get lower, and then they fix it.
But I have been at enough races in person that I've seen enough events where there's just not enough no reps.
Correct, but it's not as bad.
No, but I'd say that's more impactful on the race than the actual over no repping on things. But I would say when they are up in your grill while you're burpee broad jumping, and they're like up in your grill about where your foot steps up to match the other foot. And then they're up in your grill about like where your hand's 1 inch too far forward. Like that affects your pacing and your like we talked about how like turning around affects like your rhythm to keep going. That affects you way, way more when they're like all over you. And like, I just think with the burpee broad jumps is like, if it's egregious, punish it. If it's not egregious, like if it's gray area, like, relax on it because that's not the one to be like trying to hammer no reps on people. We've seen the videos of people like falling forward and like gaining 6 feet. Like obviously you don't want that to happen, but if someone's gaining an inch, like that's not the issue.
I'm in the minority here. I think they should remove form standards on burpee broad jumps for the upper body. I think that fixes. I think that you should be able to fall forward if you want to, but both feet should have to come up and hit the ground simultaneously, and then you can't cheat because you get as much as you want forward, but you have to sell out a bit to jump forward, get both feet up, and you can't jump your feet past your hands. And if you can't stagger step, you can't cheat the rep. So I actually think
6'5", you're just getting way extra distance,
and you're getting it on your jump anyway. My point is they lowered.
Rich get richer then.
They lowered they tightened the circle of what's acceptable, and by doing that, made it way harder to judge. And now they made small discrepancies in form look like huge, egregious cheating penalties, when in reality it'd be immaterial if you just couldn't step up in the first place.
I was like panicking the entire time in Chicago doing burpee broad jumps because I was doing this step up right, step up left, and if my toe was like a 1/4 inch past the other one, Mo was like he was like a second judge on me, and he was like, the feet, don't let me see it again, I will walk you back. And I'm like, dude, like I cannot make my feet be like more aligned than this. Like I don't know what to do. But it's very
I agree with you because when I'm watching the live feeds and seeing some of the comments, like I think it's made it more complicated for everyone to understand what is allowed, because you see these comments and they're not right. They're all wrong. Like they're trying to call people out that are actually doing it perfectly fine. It's just like maybe their style looks a little bit differently. And I think it's just made it, I think people are understanding less now of how you're really supposed to do it. I kind of do like your idea of that the step up is gone. You just have to jump it.
Yeah. And because it's costly, let them fall forward. It evens out.
Yeah. Or you do them stationary. I don't know.
Burpee jump over something.
Yeah.
Form doesn't matter
over
anymore.
And then turn around.
Doesn't matter. touch the ground, make it over.
Yeah,
but we don't want to be stuck in place doing one more thing in a Hyrox. We want to see progress over space.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Kirk, now you've got me on that. I was watching and like, oh, is the skier ever going to end? Like, damn it, Kirk. Why did you poison the well with that?
Don't worry. We feel the same way. At least I do. I'm like, when is this over? Every single time.
Would you be up for combining ski and row to 500 in the same station and then add another station to the event?
It would be an interesting viewer experience.
Yeah.
There's no question.
Yeah, it would. Yeah, it would. And would you be able to pick which you did first?
I don't see why not.
Yeah, these are all like game changer little things here. I mean, I think most of us, especially if you moved the row to where the skier placement wise is, that's a big game changer. Because as we know, your fifth station after you just did basically 3 intense leg things right before the row gets real hard real quick.
Mm-hmm. I think just the tough part about the
500 at the beginning, that's a whole different ball game.
Tough part about the beginning is like, really, as a spectator, you might as well wait till about 7 minutes in the race to start watching. Like, I don't need to see. Just wait to see who comes off the ski, and then we'll get down to business. Kind of, right? Because otherwise, you're like, oh, they come in, but you don't know how they sort out on the ski, and then the race sort of starts from a viewer's standpoint.
Yeah,
we understand where people are actually at,
and I think people aren't really racing on the ski yet.
Right.
Like we're all just trying.
Nor should you be. I mean, really. Yeah.
And it's the easiest station to do first without feeling it, I think, other than maybe like a farmer's carry. I think those are the 2 stations that if you do them first, you don't really feel it. And thus it's not the only challenge is to hold yourself back. Whereas if you had to sell out on a ski in station 7 or 8, skiing becomes nasty.
Yeah.
Whereas farmer's carry always is farmer's carry. I get, you might have to put it down, but it's never a nasty event.
I kind of want to pivot just slightly, real quick, if that's okay. We've kind of been doing like a gripe fest for the first hour and a half in a version of it, which is rightfully so. But we do this all the time on Race Rain. We get to bitch constantly, but you guys don't necessarily on a platform. So we want to keep bitching. We keep bitching. But because we have you two on, there's 2 things I actually wanted to get to with both of you from like a pro perspective. And the 2 things, to Bracken's point, I suppose he's kind of right on the women being better performers, is you guys, Meg, Lauren, etc., went over the pond and performed. Dave, we have 1 subject study of Dave who went over the pond and didn't perform, but then it did 3 weeks later. So something, I know this is going to lose some of the audience because they don't travel overseas, but you guys do. And when you're on a big stage, it's required. So I want to hear 2 sides of things. One, we saw it with Ryan Kent where he went and laid an egg, and then his next race he goes and he just pops. David, we saw the same thing with you. There's something to that. I want you guys to dissect that. But the first thing I want to talk about is traveling and figuring out, you saw it. The Europeans came over and they didn't perform nearly as well for the men anyways. Michaela, of course, was the exception on the women's side. But like, talk about traveling. Why did you guys nail it going overseas? And like, what's that process like? And David, I want to know how much it affected you as well. Like, do you believe that was part of it or not? But first, Meg, tell me about this. How did that work for you?
I actually didn't feel great at all in Maastricht. I really didn't. Like from the first run, and I mean, granted, it was like a 500-meter sprint, so it also could have just been the fact that we were going out like hotter than hell, Like I remember having that thought where I was like, oh, like my legs do not feel that great right now. But then like now I don't want to blame being exhausted from the jet lag on the lap issue because clearly I've done it before. However, the first time was in my first race and it was that shitty 4-lap New York course. So I'm going to give myself an ounce of grace.
You don't need an excuse to run an extra lap.
Girl likes to run.
I do think the exhaustion, like you already have race brain and then are like being tired and like we flew over Tuesday night. Like I can't sleep on a flight. I was up for over 24 hours straight trying to get sleep that Wednesday night and then like get on a normal schedule. is really hard. And so I would say, like, clearly my lap counting is not I don't have the greatest stats on that to begin with, but I think it would be silly not to think that played a part for me.
So
like,
going over, sorry to interrupt, but like I am firm stance. Like unless you get there, let's say 7 minimum. Christ, if you had 2 weeks, really, if you're going 6+ hours, you like need the real amount of time. Did both of you go over there and feel less than your best self? And I mean, we got out of you what we got out of you, but
yeah,
I think if you can't act, I can't sleep on planes either. So I go somewhere, I'm cross-eyed tired, and I'm like, I'm at 80%. The governor's on me, for example. Did you guys feel that and then feel the difference in North America when you didn't have to do that?
I definitely felt better in Chicago. Like, and also just having a normal week, like training normally at my normal gym at the same times that I normally train. When we got off the flight, my buddy and I, we went right to the gym to meet Magida and Alondra. I hadn't slept in like 16 hours, and then to get right into a workout is not ideal. And I also would say, like, especially at this point in the season, I normally wouldn't taper that much based on the traveling that just kind of happened inevitably because of like accessibility to gym time and just, we were in Amsterdam for a day or two before we went to Maastricht. So like just things were not normal. And then in Chicago, like I was able to do a lot of my normal sessions. So I just felt like I had a lot more pop, and it definitely plays a major role. I know for me, I'm going over to the UK much earlier than I did for the European Championships for that reason, after having that experience.
Meg, I'm glad you said that about working out, because there's bad intel out there about you get off a flight and to feel good and to adapt, get a workout in right away. And I've traveled overseas several times now, and I've come to the conclusion, and this is what I'm telling my athletes now. So if there are people out there who don't agree with me, tell me why. I now have a no impact rule until you've slept.
Get horizontal for a period of time.
Yeah.
First.
You can work out, sure, but do not take impact until you've slept, or your lower legs just do not adapt and recover well. But you always read that. How do I adapt to jet lag? Get out and work out right away. Get out and work. Go for a run. Go for a walk. Do some stairs. I think it trashes you.
I think people always say, like, try to get on the same schedule as where you are. So like, don't go to sleep. Stay up, and then go to sleep at a normal time there. And I'm like, what I've always known as an athlete is like 2 nights, the sleep 2 nights before a race is like the most important, right? That's what I've always been told my whole life. I had trash sleep, like, because I tried following that, like, stay up, go to bed at a normal time thing. I don't know if that really matters as much as just getting as much rest as you can. I really feel like that matters more than trying to like get on the time, like the same time zone as that you're in, if that makes sense.
Dave, you're smiling. I'm excited.
Well, there's like so many things. Do I think that the travel and sleep impacted my race? Sure, a little bit. I don't want to like use that as an excuse. I honestly think the biggest impact of my race was just not running my own race, like trying to go out hot, then skiing hotter than I wanted to because everyone around me was skiing like lunatics. And I was like, I guess that's how they race over here because the sleds are so easy. Like is what I was thinking. And then running hard again and then getting to the sled and trying to move from like 4th to 2nd on the sled. Like I went for it. And that was my bigger issue. And instead of just being a little more conservative and being ready to hunt later, which is how I prefer to race. But I do think that, maybe I was 10% under my A game. Sure. But that wasn't all travel. I think that was like, again, with Meg, like I had some bad sleep when I was there. I like to run. First of all, I like to run when I hit the ground, but like 3 miles, like super easy just to get the blood pumping a little bit. That's it. And then I go and rest a little bit, but I do like to stay up and try and get semi on the normal sleep schedule. The thing that happened to me was 2 nights out from the race. We all went out to dinner. I went back to my room. I went to bed. I took a little sleeping pill so I would sleep like really well. And Meg knows this story because I told her this story the next day. So I'm fast asleep, and all of a sudden I hear like like there's this like alarm going off, and I'm so delirious because I'm like on the sleeping pill. I don't know what's really happening, and I'm like, it's just like there's like something. This sound is coming from my backpack. Like I need to like turn this off before like I wake all the people in this hotel. So I like in the pitch black, I'm reaching into my bag, which is like right next to the bed. I'm fumbling and I'm grabbing it. And I'm like, this must be it. And I grab this thing out of my bag and I turn it. And it was my protein shaker full of protein that goes like everywhere, like all over the bed, all over the floor, all in my suitcase, which was open next to the bed. Like there's just chocolate powder protein in everything. And now I'm up going, what the hell? Like I start to realize what's happening. I was like, what the hell is happening? So I'm up and I'm trying to like sweep up the room with like towels, and I'm awake for like an hour trying to clean up this massive mess and shaking out all my clothes. And this is at like 2:30 in the morning, the 2 nights out. And I end up like not going back to sleep for like 2 hours. And honestly, like if there was something that messed with my sleep and my head, it was that way more than just any of the travel. Like,
that's part of the travel. That happened as a result of the travel.
Don't you have a baby? Aren't you on that schedule?
Yeah, I am on that schedule. But we're on a schedule now of like get up for like, now she's like, it's get up for like 20 minutes and feed her and then go back to sleep. And it's not like be up for 2 hours in the middle of the night, especially on the night that you're trying to adjust to the time zones.
Yeah, I get
so. Yeah, like I think it was, you're pretty wrecked when you land on a red-eye international flight. Like you're pretty destroyed. Like you need a good night's sleep the next day. There's no question about that.
I think if you get there early, a week or more, get right on the new time schedule. Keep yourself up, go through your bad night or two and adjust. You've got 4 or 5 more days to make up for it. But if you land within 72 hours of race day, I think you just take what you can get. You sleep early and often and say, screw it. If I have to be awake in the middle of the night and sleep during the day, this is a business trip.
Yep.
It's true.
I agree with you.
So I guess now I have not booked my flights yet, guys.
What are your plans for Worlds? That's what I want to know. How soon are we going to get there?
So do you guys know the race is not on a Saturday, right? You guys know this?
Friday.
The race is a Friday night. The
Friday
men
night.
Go at 8:15 p.m. Friday night, which is 3:15 p.m. East Coast time. So you're like, hey, I got to figure out how to do this. What time's the women's race, Meg?
7.
So they are separating the races finally.
Separating the races.
Thank God.
Yeah.
Now what are we going to complain about?
I know, right?
They did it.
Maybe the 8:15 start time.
German efficiency.
That's time for a nap. That'll be good.
There'll be some napping. So I guess I've been trying to figure out, like, do I fly out Monday night and land Tuesday morning?
Yes.
Do I land Wednesday morning?
I'm landing Monday morning.
Monday morning.
I'm not playing no games.
Yeah.
If you have money on the line, invest in your trip.
And the flights are not, it's the price wasn't any different for me. I mean, you and I are like relatively close. Like we're both going to end up in Newark and direct flight. So it's pretty easy for us. So that's what I'm doing.
Are you going to Manchester or are you flying to London?
Going to London. I have a few friends coming. I'm going to be very cautious on how much I do while I'm there. I'm not a dummy. I do want to see a couple things, but like, I'm not going to be walking around on my feet for 10 hours a day. I might go see 1-2 things and then I'll be headed back to the house. And if I'm by myself, then that's fine. Because it's, my friends are coming to support me, but they're also coming to get a trip out of it. And I love that for them. But like I'm there, I got business to do. So
you got laps to count.
If I have 5 friends coming over and the laps get fucked up, it's on them, not me.
Yeah, for you, it's worth paying for someone's flight to be a lap counter.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, my lap counter in Maastricht ended up doing the live stream.
That's true. That was my bad. That was my bad. I put him on that.
Then I look at him at burpees when I realize I go from 2nd to like 8th place, and I just stare at him with like these eyes, and he just goes, "You did an extra one," and I was like, "Fuck," and then felt like an eternity before I even started. But
I mean, like if you're gonna fly over like Monday and the race is Friday, like you could spend Monday and Tuesday like going to museums and stuff. It's not going to hurt your race. Like I also think like you do need to have the sense of normalcy. Like Meg was talking about, like, yeah, I had like when like for Chicago, like I literally worked out in my gym each day.
Yeah.
I was on the track that I always run on the day before the race, running a couple thousands at race pace just to have my rhythm. And, you know, that whole run was 4 miles, but I did 3 by 1,000 at race effort just to feel it the day before the race. And like, there is a sense of normalcy to your own routine that you lose when you travel. And like, for me to fly one time zone over, even though my flight, I didn't get into my hotel till like almost 8 p.m. the night before the race, like that feels like nothing, you know, but flying across, you know, when you're going to fly out to London, you're going to be there Monday through Friday till the race day. You're eating things that are not the things you normally eat, and you're sleeping in a bed that's not yours all week, and you're not working out at the level of intensity you're used to. All that stuff does play a role for sure.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Broad strokes here. This is not what we do on this podcast. And I'm sure Rich will yell at me when he hears this if he listens. He doesn't like to listen to Brack and I. He's got like some thing with that. So I don't think he'll listen. But
I'm on here.
Well, that's true, but he really hates listening to Bracken and I. No, he really does. He's adamant against it. Anyways, I don't want to get too deep into training, okay? But I want to do broad strokes with this. Because if I'm in your shoes, this is what I'm thinking. You guys are the experts here. How do you periodize going from January or February and still showing up and performing big when it matters at the World Champs? Because a lot of people are listening to this are like, oh, I'm just hammering through until Worlds. And I'd be like, I don't know if that's the best idea necessarily. Like, we don't need to get specific, although I know Brack and I are going to want to ask follow-up questions. We're going to try not to. How do you make it last? That's really the question. How does Magida make his meteoric rise here last? How does Meg make her fitness last? Because it's not easy. You can't stand on the pointy end very long. And when you pop a race, hate to tell you, that's sort of the pointy end. So how do you keep it there? What do you do? This is totally a running public type question, but screw it. I want to know.
I think the biggest thing is that you have to go and look inward. Look at yourself. Look at your fitness. Look at your race that you just ran and say, what are the areas that I really need to work on? Like, is there room for me to get stronger? Is there room for me to add skill work to what I'm doing? I know that I personally had not been doing enough strength work for the previous 5 months because I had a shoulder injury. And so for me, it's like, oh man, like I can get way physically stronger than I was for the last few races. And then on top of that, it's being able to maintain that speed. So for me, it's going to be dialing in a little more higher end speed to get a little faster, to like sharpen up a bit more over these next couple months, like getting used to that intensity that I know is going to get thrown around a bit more at the early end of this race.
I actually was going to say something very similar. So I don't necessarily change my running volume that much, but I definitely change the intensity. So like I'm doing some shorter, faster stuff right now, which is really fun. Like going from doing repeat thousands or miles to like repeat 400s is really fun. I'm like, holy shit, it's over already. Like it's over. Like, all right, you know, so that's been fun. I also I'm on another bigger strength cycle. I feel the same way. I think it's really hard when you're gearing up for a championship, especially like even 4 weeks out, to really keep the strength numbers up. It's just really hard because you're doing a lot of very specific work. So I'm not taking a break from doing specific stuff. I still do like 1 to 2 bigger Hyrox workouts a week, but like I change a lot. Like I do comparable exercises that are going to help me with all my movements for the race. But like I get really tired of doing sandbag walking lunges. Like I get really tired of it. Like, so now I'm doing a shit ton of Bulgarian split squats, barbell split squats, like all of comparable stuff, but just changing it slightly so that it gives your mind a little bit of a break too, and adds some variety. So like I was doing some strongman stuff the other day. Like
that's dope.
just for differentiation in training. And like, this is the time to do it. Obviously in a month, that's going to be a different conversation, but
yeah, I mean, so like, I think
open, so it's like,
are you?
Yeah, it's going decent. I mean, I don't really know what I'm doing, but
I kind of second what Meg said. Like, I've definitely been throwing some variance in. Like this week, instead of doing just a ton of lunges, I've been doing deficit split squatting and heel elevated narrow stance squatting and things like that. So like finding ways to change the approach to add, like the deficit split squatting is going to be for more like glute focus and opening up my hips more, and the narrow stance squatting and doing it whether you're heel elevated or not, but adding that heel elevated, it's a whole other like layer to it. It's a lot more strength around the lower quad, like above the knee, right above the knee. And so it's going to help me like come out of the hole a little bit better on those lunges. Like I'm thinking very specifically about like, where are these weaknesses? Where can we improve? It's doing more intensity, adding burpees with my high intensity work. It's things like that. So you're just less like, what are these little spots? What are these little things where I could squeeze 15 seconds here and there?
Yeah. Well, I really like that elevated heel, Dave, because one thing that's tough is you're one of the people who's embraced a high stack shoe for this. You're in that 39 millimeter heel Saucony Endorphin Pro 3, I believe. On that, when you're lunging in that, you're up on a platform. You're doing deficit now. Your knee's getting below your toes. And so I like the idea that you're stacking some height on your heel to get used to putting that down towards that teardrop stress on your quad. I like that a lot. That's thinking there. I like that.
Yeah. I'm also been doing most of my lunges in endorphin speeds anyways. So I'm kind of used to a little bit of stack there as it is, but this is a big stack. You're not wrong. Like,
yeah. So I think this World Championship coming up is unique. I think that it is the first time the vast majority of the contenders there all have a very good idea what's about to happen. First one, no one had any clue what was going on. Then they had their COVID one, and then they started doing the arena. This is the first time where I feel like even the new, I'd say Meg's new, and yet she's starting to feel like a vet. Because she, what have you done? 3 races? 4?
4.
3 have been
2 on the grid.
2 have been on the grid. Like 50, yeah. So you have as much grid experience now as anyone had coming into World Championships last year.
Yeah.
So people get what's coming on. People get what's about to happen. And I think for the first time ever, we're going to see an intentionally tactical World Championships where people are going to come in with a plan, with knowing exactly how to prep for it. And we all have a track background. We all have a cross-country background. When it came down to championship season, workouts started changing. It wasn't just straight Ks anymore. You had change of pace Ks. You had accelerations in the middle. You were hitting some reps where you're going 10 seconds over pace to start handling the surges of championship season. You were starting to finish workouts fast. You're starting to work on sharpening your kick, running in traffic. The skill of racing in a championship race started to get worked on. And I don't think we've ever had to do that in Hyrox before. So are you guys starting to think about how this training block has to be different from anything else you've ever done for Hyrox?
Yeah, I think a lot of the training that I'm specifically doing is in direct response to the strengths of specific individuals that I think are going to be there in the second half of that race.
Yeah, that's a good answer. And I agree for sure, especially after Chicago. Because I feel like I executed a plan I went in with, but I had a little buddy hanging on for the ride that I was hoping wouldn't maybe be there. So now and there wasn't much more I could do at that point in that race. I mean, I had, some of the best times on the last 3 stations too. So it's like, what more can you do? But you're hoping to keep that gap or create a bigger one so that you don't have that kind of thing happen. So yeah, you definitely change your approach based on how other people are going to perform or how they're going to approach it too.
Well, it's so interesting, right? So like you're in this, sorry.
I want to know how you would have won that race. Tell us now that it's over. Was there a way? I asked Lauren the same question when we interviewed her last week, and she said she wouldn't have. She said I wasn't going to win that race no matter what I did. So what about you?
I don't know that I had much more in the legs to run faster. I mean, I think ultimately that was where, I mean, I was pretty close on the lunges even. But she was able to just take off in that run after, and I just physically could not go much faster than that. So I think that later running, you know, and I was hammering the lunges because I was back a little bit. So I was exerting a lot more probably than she needed to at that point of the race. And so, I mean, it was probably those last two runs was where the separation was created between Michaela and myself. So yeah, for me, it's just like being able to manage that late in the race, but also keep the front half the same. She caught up a lot on the row as well. And Bracken, I remember you saying like, that was a shitty row for Meg. And like, it really was when I watched the live feed and like, thank God.
Did I say that?
Yeah, you did. That's fine.
Those words,
my upper back, like,
wow.
I have a really strong upper back and I can see like I am pulling so hard on that. Like so like those little pieces, like, you know, where people are catching up to you or they're gaining a little bit of time on you because they maybe have a little bit left or a little more in the tank, but I don't know that I'd want to approach the beginning any different than I had, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I think what's so interesting is like, if you look at the women's field, like Meg is in this unenviable position of there are three women who really could absolutely win that race. And you have one who likes to front run and one who wants to stalk from the back. And you're kind of that person who's in the middle, like it's this unenviable position of like,
what do I do?
Do I allow this one to run away from me, or do I allow this person to hunt me the entire time? And is there a way to, you know, and I think what we've seen with Lauren Weeks is that like, she's one of those people that gets stronger the bigger the lead gets, like the confidence is there. And so I think you see that on the men's side too, to a degree, but we're going to have Sandy's going to go out hot because he just says he's never not done that. And, you know, is Kent going to go with him? Is Hunter going to be in the race? And is he going to go with him? And then which guys are going to like Dylan's going to stalk from the back. I'm probably going to do that too, but who knows? And then you have Venus and you have Tobias and you have Roncevic. And so there is like this, like where all of these different styles kind of collide and the races within the race, the impact that has, like who's going to get chewed up and spit out because they're in a battle rather than just running. It's a fascinating, because like, can you afford to really wait the whole time?
I know. And I go back and forth with that, like on my own as well, because I came from really far behind in Europe and I know I can do that. I know I'm mentally tough enough to do that, but there is something to be said about having that momentum when you start creating that gap, because that's how I felt in Chicago when I ended up getting the record at the time. Like that was what I knew I was on. The like halfway through, it was like, you're going to get it. You're going to get it. And then every station felt like a breeze because I had that like positive momentum, even though it wasn't a very deep race at that point. I was solo, but that didn't matter. It was just like how you and Dylan were saying in Chicago for you, is like the momentum and the confidence that it built was huge. So I've kind of done both. And I would rather not come from behind though. I will say that is much fucking harder.
You see like the best times get run typically in races where people are basically unchallenged.
Because you're running your own race.
Exactly.
You're not affected by anyone else.
Hunter's best time, Kent's best time, Dylan's best time. Really, I can't say that I was like unchallenged in North American Championships, but I didn't allow myself to get like pulled into like a dogfight until the end, you know? And I think that there's something to be said about that. Roncevic this past weekend, like his best time he's ever run. It tends to happen when people are just like able to be like, I'm just doing a workout. I'm just working out. And then all of a sudden you're like, damn, I just ran this massive PR.
We saw this in OCR as well, that sitting and kicking isn't as guaranteed of a strategy as it is in track or cross country, because you can do everything right and something else can stop you from being able to do it. Again, if you run a 5K and you run with less effort than everyone else until the last 400, you're going to win if you have more energy. Where in OCR, you can sit and be so chilled and then hit a technical section and not get through it well. And now there's a gap, or you slip off an obstacle and you can't use this energy. And Hyrox is the same. Like if you sat on Michaela from the start, there's a chance suddenly she's 20 seconds faster on the pole still. And even though your next station should be better than her, suddenly like, your plan's gone. Or you can do everything right and it doesn't work necessarily.
In Europe, Lauren got so far ahead. And of course, like at this point, I'm like not even in the conversation. So Lauren had gotten so far ahead that Michaela couldn't catch her. You know what I mean? So that was a case where the Michaela strategy did not work. And it was significant. Like it wasn't 20 seconds. It was over a minute.
Yeah.
Cause
minute 15,
but then it worked for me in that case, because I came back and I was only 25 seconds behind Michaela when I finished. So like it worked ish. I didn't beat her, but you get my point. Like I caught up.
It was effective
significantly. So but it doesn't always work, you know? So you're playing, I don't know. I wouldn't want to sit behind Michaela, but I would sit behind Lauren.
Well, it'd be fine to sit behind Michaela after sled pull.
Right. Because
you almost have to
outskeet her,
outpush her
on that, it seems.
Yeah, and then just wait for her.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about wait.
Yeah.
Run your, because I felt like when I watched the rerun, Meg, it looked like there were a number of times that I wouldn't say you overran, but I would say that you ran in response to Lauren, and that a couple times you would like on the run, you'd pull her back enough to like feel like I'm still attached. And
I did. So I think the live stream might've showed a little bit different than what I was really doing, because I actually
it didn't show me at all.
I actually was very intentionally not trying to catch her on the run. I shouldn't say it that way. There were a few times on the runs where she was only maybe 5 or 6 seconds ahead, and I just left it because I knew overexerting that 10 seconds might hurt me in the next station. And so I chilled. Like, I don't think I overexerted in the runs. I think I just was naturally catching up without overexerting to do so. But if I was close enough where I was in contact, I just hung out. Because I knew like, what is the, risk versus reward ratio here for like 5 seconds of gain? Like I'm going to I could trash myself for the next thing. So, but then there was a point where we're getting later in the race and now you kind of you just got to do what you have to do. But I was catching up on the runs, but I wouldn't say I was killing myself to do so, or at least it didn't feel like it.
Dave, did you say they didn't show you at all?
I'm being facetious, but my like for example on the running, like that's where I won the race, and they literally did not show me like on a single run. You'd see me like go by really fast, but like no one ran with me like at any point in time. Like I never had like a camera person running with me,
which was unfortunate.
Yeah,
I'll say this while I have you two here, and there's like 6 more people I have to reach out to. I'm sorry for you guys not being identified on screen. The day after, and I said this once on here, but while you're here, the day after the coverage, I was on the incline trainer watching the coverage back. And as I'm hearing myself say, do we have eyes on Dave Magida? No, we haven't seen him at all yet. You're on screen running past me. Well,
I think it was sled pull. I think that was a sled pull.
Not see. And it was egregious watching it on my TV. But what you guys are seeing right now, this quadrant, that's the size of the entire feed, along with 9 other. And Dave, there were so many times you were on screen and I'm thinking, how do I not talk about him? I didn't see you guys and I felt terrible. You guys deserved more talk. You didn't get it. And I'm not looking for
There were a lot of times that like you guys
I just want you to
if it was
know.
me or Kent. Kent and I were wearing the same shirt, our 10,000 gear. And so like I understand. But you know, it just was unfortunate.
It is. And on a TV, it's clear.
But it also impacted
in the moment,
like,
we couldn't see it.
The camera people who are running, they also, like Dave and Bethany, their headphones died. So they didn't know who was leading, who was in second, who was in third. So they were still running out, filming Kent and filming other people who had fallen behind. And so like that was also like part of the reason, like you weren't also getting the right video footage. And then when the women's race started, the camera people split off anyways.
I remember watching it back and like I would be like right next to the camera person and Lauren would be like just ahead and it would like seem like there was this huge gap, but they're really like I was literally just next to the person with the camera and like they were just filming her from behind and I'm just literally like side by side them.
Yeah.
So that was like that was like interesting because I'm like, I'm right there. Like, I'm not even that far. I'm just right there, you know.
Vivian should be furious. Well, Vivian never got talked about. Linda, I called her Linda Blair the entire coverage. I would rail against anyone who did that. It's terrible. I do not know what happens. It just flipped a switch. I couldn't do it. Vivian was clearly on screen as I'm on the treadmill watching. And we couldn't see her.
It's hard to tell from behind, though. There were so many times when in the feed, like you guys are talking, you thought Vivian was Linda or whatever, but like
they don't even look alike.
It's behind her angle.
Yeah.
You can't even see her face. So
anyway, I'm not looking for. It's okay. I'm not looking for excuses. I just want people to hear that it is not intentional, and you deserve better. Truly.
Well, so as somebody who has broadcasted many a race, Bracken, and many with the grid of screens, I could attest to the fact that you're spot on. It is very hard, particularly like when I usually do it with a big second monitor, and I drag
TV,
it on
my cord.
Yeah, and so all of a sudden it is like very manageable because then I have a screen that at least makes each box 6x6 or whatever, and then your face is close to it and it works. But I knew you were on a laptop in a room like
it was embarrassing to watch. So while you're here, I'm sorry.
I'm gonna chime in real quick. I do love hearing you apologize, Bracken, but I'm gonna be late for work, so I got to roll out. I've just been waiting to sneak in here so I can get out of here. Guys, it's been great chatting with you. I need to roll. You can wrap it up. I trust that.
Kirk.
Good to see you guys.
Hey, man.
Bye.
So, Linda, Vivian, I would say Bridget.
It's got real close.
Oh yeah, let's do something about this.
Okay, that's better.
See my whole gym now.
It wasn't ideal, and even watching it back, I thought, oh, come on, Bracken. Like that, they're literally in front of you as you're saying. I haven't seen this person all day, so hopefully for Worlds we have this. I mean, we're not going to be at Worlds announcing, so we'll have a better view. But there are some things we can iron out and get people the time on screen they deserve. And if they're on screen, the words that should accompany them.
I think that's the other thing. Yeah, and so. Hopefully they agree to do another live stream for Worlds because I think it's really important that there's something that isn't just on a tape delay coming out a week later and like a really weird brief wrap up or a TV show that's going to be shown on who knows what network. Like I think showing the race itself is the most valuable part of growing this sport within people who care
agree.
About it.
Yeah.
All the documentaries and ESPN specials with interviews, that's fine, but nobody really cares about that stuff.
Especially when you already know who won. It's like it's not the same experience when you already know how the finish ended up.
Meg, did you ever watch the World Championship documentary from last year, the one that was on like ESPN?
Gonna be real honest, no.
I didn't either.
What does that say, right? And I watch everything.
Because the only thing that matters is the race in the moment. That's it.
Yeah.
And that's one that's that last year's coverage, it's unusable footage to even watch while you're training. Like on the spin bike or on the treadmill, that's not even, I don't even pull that one up. I'll pull up Dallas or something because it's stop motion graphics. You don't even get a sense of a race.
So like the best coverage they ever had outside of live was the Elite 12 when they did that whole show. Like that was good. It felt like a race, even though it was on treadmills. Like I legitimately, that was the thing that made me be like, I really want to run this race. I could be good at this race. And then, well, that and Hunter called me and was like, he invited me to the Hyrox Invitational. And I trained for it for a month, and then he withdrew the invitation. But that's what really got me in. But watching the Elite 12, that was what got me hyped for my first Hyrox. So, so if they actually listened to the people who compete in this and the people who are excited about it, then they would just invest like 10 grand in a dope live stream and ditch the rest of the crap.
Yeah. All right. We got to wrap up here. We got to close this thing out. So I want you guys to take yourself out of world championships. Because we know, Dave, you've never bet on anyone other than yourself. And Meg, I've got to assume you're not far behind in the self-confidence column. So obviously we assume you're both assuming you win it. Let's take you out. What is your projected podium for Worlds? Meg, I want you to actually, let's just start. Meg, project the women's side, and Dave, you do the men's, and then we'll swap.
With me out, Lauren Weeks wins. 100%. Clear win. Michaela, and then Alondra.
You are Michaela's link to the front.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I think I am. And then I think Alondra has been such an amazing performer in both of these championships. I say she takes third.
I agree with that. She still seems like she has a ceiling on her she's not hitting yet.
Yeah. And, I think like every time I run with her, like I've actually competed with her 3 out of my 4 races because she was in New York with me on my first one. She just gets better and better every time, She
just manages to hang around, huh? She's just there.
She's also ballsy.
She is ballsy, and she's tough.
She's not afraid of the moment. She's not afraid to insert herself into the race. She's not afraid of blowing up.
No. And she is strong. So yeah, I think she'd be third. I think Michaela still has some on her in the running.
Yeah, for sure.
So, but I'm going to put Lauren wins by a lot.
All right. And now predict the men. You, Meg.
Is this
Dave's not there. Dave's not there.
I'm not there. Don't worry about hurting my feelings. I'm not there.
Hunter's in or out?
Hunter's in.
We'll see.
Going with my boy Kent. Wins. I'm going Sandy third. Sorry, Sandy. And I'm going Hunter second.
It's a home race for Sandy.
Which isn't always an advantage.
I know.
No.
Travel, yes.
Travel yes.
Pacing, wakes up at his own bed.
Pressure, no. He might have a lot of people there. I don't know. I'm going Kent.
He will have a lot of people.
I'm going Kent, Hunter, Sandy.
Indoor nationals.
Shit, Alex.
Yeah, dude, the men's field is crazy.
This is really hard.
Indoor track nationals every year. Someone qualifies near the back of the field, but they're hosting that year and they lead a distance race because they've got everyone on their team and all their hometown there. And that's a potential drawback for Sandy.
Yeah.
Too hyped up.
Okay, wait. I'm changing it. I'm going to put Alex third. I'm going to put Sandy fourth. Sorry, I bumped you down, bud.
It's all right. Dave, same deal to you.
Oh, man, this is tough. I honestly think you could roll it. Like, you could just, pick a card, any card, and, it could be any of, 7 guys. So the fact that I'm picking one of these people or 3 of these people should not be, locker room bulletin board material for anybody else. Because, honestly, I know it will be. I think that Roncevic has never missed. I mean, I guess Chicago was the first time he missed a major podium, and he was 4th. So
he was on a champagne tour. I don't think it counted.
Maybe. I don't think he felt that way. he spent a week in the States leading up to it. And I think he wasn't jet lagged or anything like that. I think he was ready to race. He definitely took it seriously enough to go a week ahead of time. So, man, I think it all depends. Like Kent could be first or fifth because
oh my goodness,
so
I just want a top 3.
I know. All right, without me there, then.
All right. Well, thanks for tuning in, guys.
I'm gonna say Kent. I'm gonna say Kent 1. I'm gonna say. I'm gonna say Dylan Scott 2. And
Shit, I forgot about Dylan.
And you're saying Hunter is not on the podium or he doesn't qualify?
I say he's not on the podium even if he qualifies.
Wow.
And I don't say that like if he had spent the whole year racing, I think he wins. But I think I don't know. Like I haven't seen him race yet. Like I'm gonna see him. We're gonna see him race soon. But like I think until I see it, like if he's the version of Hunter that finished second in Chicago last year, he's not going to get on the podium this year. He has to be the version of Hunter that was at World Championships.
He has 3 months.
He does.
And we know that he can go psycho mode in training. And that he's probably the most genetically engineered human or male for this sport that we've seen. Is 3 months enough? How much
I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree with you on any of that. But I also believe that the men's field, every single guy that was in the World Championships last year is minutes faster this year. And so his margin for error is just very, very small.
He used to be able to win through burpee broad jumps and coast if he wanted to. That's not an option anymore.
He's going to be in a dogfight. There's just no way around it. Like, even if he goes out hot like he did. Sorry, but even if he goes out hot like he wants to, like on a world record pace, there's going to be somebody matching him. And right there, Sandy is going to go out just like that. So he's going to be fighting somebody through every stage of the race.
Yeah.
And when you're not used to that, that can make a big, big difference.
He's interesting because he's not been challenged in a race that he won.
Mm-hmm.
He's not
been challenged and lost.
Yeah. But he's also the only guy currently in the sport that I think can finish unbroken.
Yeah.
If he's Hunter of old. So yeah,
but if
I think
it's gets to the wall balls and he's been in a war for 7 rounds, is he gonna have?
That's the question. It sounds crazy to bet against him, but the sport progressed as much this year as any other year.
That's my argument, is that like the year that he took it the least serious is the year that everyone got that much better. It's not like if it was Hunter against last year's field, he still wins.
I agree. What about women? Take us out here.
I'm going to go with 3rd place, Lauren Weeks, 2nd place, Michaela, and Meg Meg's not in it.
I'm not in it. Hey, no, I appreciate that.
But I think Meg's going to win it this year. I am going to go with, because now Meg's not in the race to shake things up. I'm going to go.
No shake and bake from me.
I'm going to say Michaela 1, Weeks 2, Alondra 3.
Well, in November,
in
November, I said Meg was going to win the world championship and that it wouldn't be close. But I also said Dave was going to potentially win Euros, and then I thought you'd crack at North American. So my predictions this year have been very, very poor. So take that with a grain of salt.
To be fair, if you just flip-flop those races, you were right. So, and that's the thing. Like, I think when people look at a crack, they think, oh, like this person's not fit enough. But that's just not. No. People that know racing understand that it's really just about race flow. That's really all it is.
Yeah, and you can't put 15 studs in a field and everyone PRs. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah, I mean,
people get
generally when you put that, 5 to 7 people are cracking.
Yeah, you're gonna have 2 people PR, 3 people do well, and everyone else runs their slowest time of the year. That's just the way championships work.
Yeah.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in. Meg, thank you for coming on
last minute. Thanks for having me.
Who are you filling in for today?
Rich.
And Dave, thanks for trying to fill the vacuum left by Jack.
Yeah, I was saying the permanent replacement for Jack Bauer and his inability to qualitatively analyze data.
Or at least have stable internet.
Or stable internet. I love you, Jack, man. I'm just playing.
All right. Next week, tune back in. We'll be back with more. See you, everyone.
See you, Brainiacs.